you can see us and hear us, because tonight we're talking about the top 10 things to leave off your order with special guest Tim Bartz. So let's see if you can all just give us a thumbs up or let us know in the comments if you can hear us and see us. Let's see, we'll add here. Let's wait for our guest. Okay, so good evening, everybody. And yes, we also had that problem. So we've got Tim. Welcome. We've been really pretty excited to get Tim on the show. It's been a long time coming that Tim and I do a show together because we're both very much Ford guys. So let's see once right now that seems like the channel is in a commercial from what we can see here. Let's try to watching it off to the side. So I guess, we're coming in sideways as well. Okay, well, I guess we've got no choice.
We need to rotate our...
Oh, now we're good? Yeah, okay, so now we're good, but I guess we got to rotate because we have a guest. So sorry, everyone. We'll rotate here. And now...
We'll see what we will be able to do. It's the first time doing that. But
it's us, okay.
Okay, no, we'll go back at Tim.
Okay, so this is like an internet tag here, and this is part of a live show. So sorry, folks. Okay, so
which way am I supposed to be? There, it says rotate device.
It does, but you know what? It's our show, so we get to do what we want, Tim. We don't have to listen to YouTube.
Am I right side up?
You're looking good, my friend.
I don't know.
Now,
how it looks.
No, we're still not good over on the show. So Tim, you had it right. We've got to rotate this. Well, we got to listen to Ford. We got to listen to YouTube here if we want people to be able to listen to Ford information this evening.
I'm not sure.
So I would like to say Tim did want to use StreamYard, and I think Tim was right in wanting to use StreamYard. So now everyone can see us just perfectly. Okay, good evening, everyone. Well, we'll edit this one. This isn't the live show, and we put it out as little segments. So top 10 things to leave off your order, and really Ford ordering tips and tricks with Tim Bartz, the internet specialist, when it comes to whether it's YouTube or Facebook or whatever platform that you follow Ford information on. Tim Bartz is truly the guy, and I've been recommending him now for quite a long time in regards to anyone in the US making orders, because Tim, you did something that, well, next to no dealer actually wanted to do. Very few dealers were willing to do orders at MSRP, and I think it's fantastic that you did that, and you've been taking care of the community and making sure that people have the right information.
Yeah. We've of course, I think, I think a lot of people were doing, it seemed like a lot of people, at least for 22, were doing MSRP, and hopefully, I mean, there were probably maybe some dealers at 23 that saw the possibilities and maybe didn't do MSRP, but we did. So we do that on any ordered vehicle. So anyway, yeah.
Right on. There needs to be more dealers like you and your dealer. And I think there needs to be more information out there on YouTube, because you see video after video, people always often for views, to get more views, make more money. You'll see these videos always focusing on the worst, the most negative. And well, it makes it so that we end up seeing a lot of videos because people seem to repeat the same information. So, if you've got some dealers with, way over MSRP on their inventory, which, once it's their inventory, if someone doesn't take their order, well, it's their inventory. And well, market sometimes, as for decades, traditionally often vehicles were selling less than what was on the yards. So we want to focus in on what's positive. Just like you, we want to help people save thousands and make sure they've got the right information. So really glad to have you on the show, my friend. Thank you so much for everything you've done with the FORD Maverick, FORD Bronco, all these vehicles that were, kind of itching to get.
Yeah.
So, Marie's here this evening, and I've got my partner in crime because she's going to be asking us questions, and we're allowed to ask her questions as well. Tim, I love the mug you've got there. That's pretty awesome. I really like the merch you've got going on your channel. Tim,
Looks
the man, the
backwards here,
myth,
but
the
is it right for
legend.
you?
I love it. I've always said for quite a while now, I've said that
You've
you're a
been-
gentleman and a scholar, and I've referred to you as the legend. So I'm really
Yes.
happy to see that cup. That
So-
definitely works for me.
When we went to Bronco Supercell in Tennessee, we went to the little gift shop. They had anyway, I won't tell you the whole story, but we went and found a place that had different mugs, and for Tim it said that. And I'm like, oh, that's exactly what Johnny says. That'll be funny. I gotta grab that for the live stream to share because he says that all the time.
Right on. Yes, and it's cool. We've got the legend with us this evening. So I'll let Marie start off with the first question because we're going to be covering the format of the show this evening is really making sure that people have the information they need because this summer 2023 is all about planning for 2024, and we really need to plan out these vehicles. There's been a lot of back and forth in the community, and a lot of people, I remember going back to 2021 when we started to have fewer and fewer vehicles on lots. I started to hear more and more often, well, I'm just going to wait until you have a nice selection and I'll be back. I also I work at a dealer. I'm very much involved at a dealer. I've been doing it for a decade now, and I can tell you that people like Marie, they consume and they like to consume what they can see, what they can feel, what they can touch.
Yeah.
Personally at my dealer, we spent a good amount of money to actually keep vehicles like, one Maverick, one Mach-E, because Mach-Es are really hot in our area. And even one Lightning. We always tried to have a Bronco, for example, as a demonstrator vehicle so people could still sit in it, touch it. But, I think the people have probably gotten the most negative feedback from the community are the people that actually bought over, over MSRP for those rare canceled orders. But I came across, start off with a joke and then we've got questions. Marie's got questions for us. But I came across this and I kind of made me chuckle because I said, boy, is that ever true? You've got your typical XL hybrid Maverick owner that paid $5,000 over MSRP for a 2023, or we could even, apply this even more so to a 2022 Ford Maverick. Driving it 10,000 miles already and seeing the price increase for a 2024, knowing people are still going to wait a year for it. And some people would, in the community were laughing at people that were waiting, they're like Marie, 18 months for their hybrid Maverick. But people who wait, life's never 100% pros. You can't have everything on your side. And while Marie waited 18 months, she now has, because I'm waiting on a Bronco. Well, my Bronco's getting in this week or next week to the dealership, and Marie would like to drive a Bronco. She has posted her Maverick for sale for $10,000 more than she paid for it. So
We'll see.
We'll see. We'll see. So life is never all only positive. You can't expect to get just positive things out of life. And while there is a bit of a negative, waiting 18 months, I think you're going to be pretty happy when even on trade, you'll get 5,000-6,000 more than what you paid for it, or you sell it yourself, and you get 10,000 to 12,000 more than you paid.
Mhm.
Not so bad.
Yeah,
So
not so bad.
just wanted to start off the show with a joke that will make people who did maybe pay a little over MSRP for inventory that was immediately available. Well, they're kind of laughing now. They've got their vehicle, they don't have to wait for it, and they wouldn't be at a loss if they sold it now. Because you work at a dealer, and I'm sure your sales staff has heard this often. I will wait longer to buy my new truck. Surely Ford will come to their senses and lower their prices. And we see a lot of that in the forums, like, oh well, it's crazy. Ford's gonna go or YouTube. Ford's doomed. Ford's gonna go bankrupt because they've increased the prices. But this is just every manufacturer is increasing prices, and when they need to, they also decrease prices, which we saw in the Mach-E, but I certainly don't expect the Maverick to be coming down in price anytime soon. So now that my somewhat meme jokes that kind of let us know what's going on are out of the way, Marie, I'll let you take lead of the show and really enjoy the fact that we've got Tim with us.
Yeah, we'll ask the first question. But first of all, I want to say hi to Sarah in case she listen or she will listen the video after. So it could be nice to meet her someday, but we're happy now to have you, Tim. So
Yeah.
the first question for you, Tim, what are your top 10 things to leave off a Ford order?
Okay. I'd say the biggest thing, of course, I think we've all kind of been saying this, at least Johnny and I have for about a year now, is that keep those things that you can get later off your order, right? So, I mean, I don't know if you want to name all of the different bed accessories, but your tonneau covers, taking those off of your orders, and leaving those off, leaving off the bed extender, your splash guards. Yeah, that protective film is a big one. I actually had someone the other day on the Maverick Truck Club that had said, they have a 22 that they put in that's still not scheduled for 23 that they think they're going to roll over to 24, and whether or not they're going to get both private offers, which we don't know yet. And even one of the persons that I reached out to that said, that's a great question. I don't think we thought about that. And they don't have the answer. And so they said, I said, you need to make sure, first of all, you should get scheduled by now if you had a 22 to 23 and your dealership prioritized your order. I said, but you need, do you have any of these items? And they said, well, the protective film, it's being produced at 3%, but it's the amount of orders is 2%. So it's within its capacity. I said, yeah, but the capacity is so low that it's going to take a while for it to get scheduled because it's, I'd rather be in that I've always kind of used the joke of if I'm gambling, I'd rather take something that I'm going to win 97% of the time versus the 3% of the time. And that's where they're at, is they have protective film. And I'm like, take it off because it's going to be a lot harder to get scheduled. I've seen so many times where we had 2 orders that were our last 2 to get scheduled from rolled over from 22 to 23. And we had a couple new orders that passed over them. And I said, we need you to take your bed cover off. And the other one, they had to take the splash guards off. And we did that month. The next month, they both scheduled. So yeah, those low percentage items are what's is a killer to take those things off of your order. So that's probably the biggest things, is those accessories more than anything. So.
Yeah, that's a good advice, because what you can put after this, you can just leave it now. Yeah, that's a good advice.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it won't change anything. You're still going to get what you want. I really like how you explain it, and how even if there's space for it, why not put all the chances? If you're a gambler, go with what you have. Go with the winnings. And how I picture it in my head is we've got roughly 3,300 dealers across Canada and the US. And I like to picture a big wheel that turns. And there's 3,300 spots on that wheel. And if everyone's getting, when we look, next month you get 5 FORD Maverick allotments for your dealership. Some it's going to be, 8. Some dealerships it's going to be 0 or 1. But when it becomes, that wheel is turning. And when it becomes your dealership's turn, well, even if you're only at 3% people who are asking for that clear film, and there's 2% availability, you could think, oh, well, of course I'm going to get it. Well, not necessarily, because if you're at the end of that wheel and you're the last dealer to get fed its allocations, well, then the other dealers will have taken up that wrap, and there won't be any. And then instead of you getting built, well, the person behind you or a few people behind you in your dealership's waiting list get picked up before you do. And you can, time after time, continuously get pushed until, I like to picture that wheel again. At some point in the year, your dealership's going to get picked first, and you'll get, even if something isn't available, you're going to get luck of the draw, mind you. It's very rare, but when your dealership is the first, well, then if there's any available parts and all the available parts for, let's say, a Bronco, which was extremely restrained. Well, for example, I got a Wild Track Bronco built, but my dealership, 1, had allocations, which is really important. And 2, I was the next one up on the list, and it must have been, our dealership must have been pretty early on that spinning wheel. It wasn't, we weren't at the point in the year where we're getting picked out and allocated vehicles last out of the 3,300 dealerships. I hope that makes sense to the community.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I think that's a good way of putting it. So,
Okay, we have a second question for you, Tim. Do you think electric vehicles are here to stay?
yes, I do. Yeah, I do, and I think we're seeing now. I think just recently with Tesla opening up their chargers to pretty much any manufacturer that comes to them, that helps it out because then that way everybody can be able to use chargers, and we see a lot more chargers around, and I think it is. I think I think I don't know. We're seeing more and more people go that route. I talked to someone recently, as a friend of mine, that says I'm intrigued by it, and at least people are thinking about it. And he's somebody that I'd love to have a vehicle that's just a commuter that I can drive, and and be in an EV. And he recently he had to get a new mower, and he bought an electric mower. And I think you're going to see, and that's probably a big thing, is starting with something smaller that's cheaper. Buying a battery mower and using it and seeing how easy it is to use that and some of the downfalls and everything, and then moving up to more expensive items, including vehicles. But yeah, I think it is. But I think Ford is doing is they're trying to make an fuel efficient vehicle in every model. So we may not ever see a full EV Maverick. In my opinion, I don't know if we will. Hopefully plug in, but as fuel efficient as the hybrid is, you may not need to, because I still think that every vehicle should be a plug-in. I'm like, give me a plug-in because I get the best of both worlds. I can go all electric, commuting to and from work, and then I have the hybrid to go out of town and not have to work for a charger and find a charger. But I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, and I guess plug-in and hybrid will be the most popular ones because full electric is not always convenient for everybody. So yeah, I think it's true. Maybe these two will be the favorites.
Yeah, because not everybody. I mean, like for me, an EV, I'm okay. Like when I want to drive and take a trip, I don't. I mean, I usually like to drive in about a couple hours, and then I want to get out, stretch my legs, and everything else. And I don't mind plugging in every couple hours to a charger, going, and taking a break, maybe catching up on it because I don't drive and text or or any of that. So that's a time that I could spend 20, 30 minutes catching up on my text messages or phone calls. Or I can, do the phone calls on the road, but at least my text messages and maybe some other things I can catch up on while it's charging and then get back on the road. But it's all the lifestyle, because there are other people that are like, I'm going to drive 6 hours straight. I'm going to stop for gas for 5 minutes and get back on the road. And that's just the person they are. And they're not an EV driver because that's not going to work for you.
Yeah.
Or they could be like me, where we have a vehicle that's the vehicle we take out of town that's a gas vehicle or a hybrid. And then, one of the people in the family uses the commuter EV, or they switch back and forth, because I can see that as well. But usually in a 2-car family, you'll see one. You can see one that's an EV and one that's not, and I think we're going to see more of that.
That's true. We need one car to do the long distance, and the other one, it's more convenient to go to work. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we were just.
I was going to say, as we get more chargers, then that can change. We can probably see more EVs, and as EVs are able to have bigger batteries, and we're able to go further, we'll see it too. I mean,
yeah, the technology will continue to grow up.
There has been a lot of talk on YouTube about kind of, and it's weird. I've been coming across these titles on YouTube saying electric vehicles are done because now it's going to be hydrogen. I'm really not so sure about that because, first of all, the way of the V8 probably is unfortunately on its way out. And it's not because V8 engines, still consume a ton of fuel. It's because, well, the laws have changed, and we are moving towards going out to the full CAFE 50 mile per gallon as a fleet average rules, and that's why we even look at Dodge, and Dodge has been paying billions of dollars to Tesla in order to buy carbon credit credits, to buy carbon credits, and in buying those carbon credits, they spend a couple billion a year so that they avoid spending even more in taxation. So the only way we're going to have vehicles like big V8s that are, let's say, doing 20 miles or 30 miles per gallon, the only way that can work for a company is if they're selling those in low volume. So something, for a very rare model, like let's say Ford F-150 Raptor supercharged, or an R version. Yeah, if they sell 1,000 or 2,000 a year out of all 800,000 F-150s that are sold, well, then your average, even if it's getting, even if it was getting 15 miles per gallon, doesn't really matter as long as your regular F-150 is getting 50 miles per gallon. But Dodge, and Dodge is cutting out the V8 altogether because no matter what, just like an F-150, we're not going to have gas-powered F-150s doing 50 or 60 miles per gallon anytime soon. So I agree very much here with Tim saying that we've really got two options in two-car families. Having an electric vehicle that doesn't quite have the range you need for, your family vacation or those times when you go on a long drive or out to the cottage, whatever it may be, in your hiking area, camping area, that's fine. If you're a two-car family and you can say, you know what, we'll take the FORD Maverick. The FORD Maverick will pull the camper out to the, the lot, the cottage lot, and we can use the camper there. Because right now, we're just shopping campers. We're looking at campers this evening, the campers that you pull on a trailer, and we're thinking, well, with the EV, we're not sure that we'll make it to the cottage is about 200 kilometers, so about 140 miles away. We're not sure if we make it to the cottage in one shot, and we don't really want to, if it's a Friday night and we're going out to the cottage, we don't necessarily want to stop for 30, 40 minutes. So
yeah, the time, it's not only the plug that we need to have on the road, it's the time too that you need to wait.
Yeah, the time's important, but I am really a huge fan of plugins because I really look forward to the future where I can get a Bronco, let's say, if ever the Bronco does come plug-in, which can be a question for later on, what your thoughts are on this. But I'd love a plug-in Bronco because I would go to work 100% electric every day.
Mhm.
And on a Sunday, if I want to go out for a Sunday drive and actually hear the exhaust, well, I'd like that option as well. And I'd also like to be able to pull a camper or a snowmobile, two snowmobiles or two jet skis. I'd like to be able to pull it for whatever distance I want without having to get out and stretch my legs. And yes, the network for charging will get better, but we were up in the mountains. We went up to an area where you can drive all the way to the top of the mountain in Quebec. And we were out there, and I kind of laughed because the only chargers, we were really very much out in the back country, but the only chargers we came across, Tim, were 50 kilowatt an hour chargers. So thankfully, we actually calculated to be able to drive. The weather was perfect. So we would have gotten about 10, 12 hours of driving out of our Lightning. So real joke, we were doing we wouldn't have gotten that many hours. We're doing 20 kilowatts an hour. At one point, we were at 10 kilowatts an hour because we were coming down for many, many kilometers downhill. But these 50 kilowatt charger would have been kind of slow. It would have been more than one coffee. That's for sure. So we're definitely looking forward to plugins, but I think battery technology is here to stay. But two things are going to happen. Batteries are going to become more efficient at taking a charge. We'll be able to take a charge without heating up the battery or the wire that's transferring that electricity nearly as much. And Ford is working on that, on sort of what we could call refrigerated cooling cables so that the cables don't heat up. And Ford's also been working for quite a while now on lithium iron phosphate batteries, which are now starting to make a big splash in the news in regards to Chinese companies as well as Tesla themselves. So I think Ford is well positioned. I think there's good reasons that Ford stock's been going up considerably in the last 30 to 45 days.
Okay, so next question. It's for Tim and Johnny. So what are your top tips and tricks for ordering a Ford Maverick, Bronco, F-150, Lightning, Mach-E, Ford Ranger, etc.? Who wants to start?
I'll let Tim start. I'll let the legends start.
Yes. I think especially if you're wanting to get in early and get one, to go into the dealership and do that pre-order. you know, and at least letting them know that you're planning to order with them. Some of them will have a line, some of them, you know, depending on the dealer, how big they are, it may be that the salesperson may have a list. And, you know, when they go to take those orders to the desk or to that manager, then, you know, which order are they going to put in first, second, third. And I think, you know, so that I think it's important to get in there ahead of time. You know, I know some people say, you know, a pre-order is not really that important because if they have somebody in front of them, they're going to order that one first. But if you're local, you know, maybe do both. Maybe get in there, have the conversations, because I think it's important that you find out from your dealer. And I've been saying this in a lot of my videos recently, our complete guide videos, is that, you know, make sure that you know what the dealership's going to price, how they're going to price. Ask them those things about, you know, what's their do they know about price protection? Are they going to honor that? Do they know, you know, how to lock those incentives in, which is actually not something that they do. Ford does it for them, but do they know how to treat that order when it comes in? You know, do they know these things? Because if they're stumbling and they don't know those things, then I'd be a little scared. You might want to continue to look for a dealer, you know, locally if you want to go locally and such, and then also find out whether or not, you know, they're going to add anything there. I think that's the common theme lately is that dealers are going, yes, we're going to price an MSRP, but you have to get this protective film. You have to get this window tint that comes on every vehicle, no option. It's going to cost, you know, $2,000. So you're going to have to pay that. So really what you're doing is you're pricing it $2,000 up instead. Just be transparent about it. But, you know, I say making those conversations so you know what you have when that day when you're ready to go into the dealership, then you're ready to do that with that order and such. I think that's a big tip is for me. I would say get that all done ahead of time.
And that's, if I can add on to your point, one thing that makes me lose hair and get more grays in the beard and on the head are YouTube videos that like to just take turns being like, Ford's completely corrupt, Toyota's completely corrupt, and they just go one brand after another. Or sometimes there's some channels that just like to only pick on Ford, and then there's other channels that only like to pick on Dodge. But I don't find that as a consumer of information, I don't find that helpful. It's not information I can use to, well, the purpose of our channel. And don't forget, folks, to subscribe to Tim Bart's channel, Long MacArthur Ford, and to Johnny's Car Care and Reviews. Hit that subscribe button and bell notification so you don't miss any information. But the reason I don't find the type of information that's just all doom and gloom helpful is because I don't gain anything in my life knowing that some dealers are, charging really an upcharge on orders. What does help me is to know how do I avoid that upcharge. Toyota, for example, right now, they're also having that issue. The manufacturer is having an issue with many of its dealers. Some of these dealers, actually, you can't avoid it. You can go state after state, and because it's really only one or two corporations that own all the Toyota dealerships across these states, you could have to drive 12 hours before you hit a state where they won't have the same over MSRP or fair market adjustment. They like to say they don't, like Tim mentioned, because it will be paying $1,500 for a wrap on the front, or maybe it's an anti-theft system for $3,000 when in reality the cost on the product is $400. So one way or another, and there's one way or another, these dealerships can end up having you pay an extra $5,000, $6,000, or $7,000 over the manufacturer suggested retail price, no matter where you go, unless you're willing to really drive out a long way. So I think, Tim, you really said it well. The best tips and tricks we can give you for ordering your Ford, or really ordering from any manufacturer, is to work with the dealership and see if they're willing to work with you. Because some dealerships aren't going to be willing to work with you, and it's just they've got an attitude of it's our way or the highway. So you need to look into that. And sometimes the add-ons are sort of, dealerships, the internet likes to pick on dealerships a lot these days, and fairly. Some dealers are doing things in a very difficult manner, a very frustrating manner. But often these are the dealerships that also, for decades, sold well below the price that they're supposed to sell. And some dealerships have gone bankrupt. Actually, a lot of dealerships have gone bankrupt. And in the past, manufacturers didn't mind one bit. They're like, great, you sold a lot of vehicles and you sold them basically on average at cost. And once you paid your electricity and mortgage, well, over a 3-year period, you went out of business. But hey, you guys moved metal for us. We're happy because now we've got a new guy willing to pay the franchise fee. We've got a new owner, a new millionaire coming in, willing to risk his millions to have a dealership. And if it doesn't work out for him, it didn't cost the manufacturers anything to have these business people go out of business. And if you're working at these dealerships, as long as the new owner came in and didn't fire everyone, often you just say, you guys know how to do the job? Good, because I'm new at this. I don't really know how to do the job. I know how to run a business, but I don't know what a Toyota is or a Ford or a GM. Really happy you've got sales guys here who've gone through 3 different owners, but I'm the owner that knows how to run this business and I'm going to run it and I'm going to make a profit. But then because of market competition, sometimes 3, 4, 5, 10 years later, they also went out of business. So that's one of the reasons why I've been pretty big on the idea. I like the idea of fixed pricing. I have no issues with Ford saying that EVs are going to be sold all at one price, one fair price. That way, we've seen it recently with the Mach-E. If Ford decides to drop 7 or 8% or 10% off the price of the vehicle, everyone benefits equally. Whether you're a really hard negotiator or you're too nice for your own good, you end up paying the same price. Everyone gets a fair deal. But when we're talking outside, and this is going to take effect more so, you can correct me, Tim, if I'm wrong, but my understanding is the contracts us dealers have signed, we've got to be selling at Ford set pricing for when those contracts go into effect, which is January 2024. But before that, some dealers will still play around with the price on the electric vehicles. And I do have a really good feeling from sort of inside talk that if this works out for the EVs and that they're still selling in volumes and it helps Ford achieve their goal of being number 1 or number 2 when it comes to EV sales in North America, that we could very well see this slowly take effect on the gasoline powered vehicles.
Mm-hmm. And I just heard you like 1 or 2 minutes ago speaking about dealer that went out of business. We had a question at the same time about that subject. So I don't know if one of you had the answer. What do you do if your dealer went out of business and you're still on the waiting list for Maverick 2023?
I'm going to let Tim answer this if you're ready, because I've heard you answer this really well in the past, and your wording was better than mine.
Yeah, if you're with a dealer, if you have an order with a dealer, that order's in there, then that dealer goes out of business. Ford will give those orders and the vehicles when they come in to another dealer. So they'll usually tell you this dealer's going out of business, that order or that vehicle is going over to this dealer when it comes in. So you don't lose it. It's shifted to a different dealer. So.
That's good.
I would sit down with the new team, meet whoever is going to be your new sales consultant, and do make sure, bring in your paperwork and say, look, the previous dealer was going to sell it to me at the price I ordered it at. Here's their signature. Can you get your manager to add his signature on this as well, so that I know that when the vehicle comes in, I know what price I'm going to pay. I'm not going to pay more than MSRP. And whether, and it depends on the dealer. Some dealers will promise you, what, when it comes in, we're going to have these upcharges. Then you can either say yes, or you can look elsewhere. They might also say, well, when it comes in, we're going to sell it to you at whatever the MSRP is, with, no added dealer fee and no forced upcharges. You don't have to take any products or any accessories, but we will sell it to you at whatever that window sticker is. And then you've got other dealers like Long MacArthur Ford that, if you order with them, I think it's pretty awesome. When the vehicle comes in, they're going to take care of you in regards to the price that you ordered at, as long as it comes in as that model year vehicle. And I think there's been a bit of confusion in the community about that. If you ordered back in 2021, and you end up getting a 24, you're not going to pay that original 2021 MSRP because you're not getting a 2022, which was the original plan. The price has gone up, but Ford, for dealers that know how to go and get it, like we did for your order, we can go out and get your special rebate if the order was COVP'd, confirmed order verification. I always say process, but I think I sometimes get my P's confused. But if the dealer knows how to go back and claim that, they won't lose anything. Now, if they don't know how to claim it, well, then yeah, the $3,850 rebate we gave you, if we didn't claim it correctly, we would have lost that money. And that's much more than the profit margin. And I shouldn't say profit, the revenue margin that's on a Ford Maverick. The revenue that's available on a Ford Maverick is just about enough to be able to keep the lights on in the building. This isn't the Ford Maverick isn't a big money maker for dealers. They'll pay the electricity and that's about it.
Yes.
Next question, Tim. Well, we know we in your channel or channel we always speak about Ford model, but what is your favorite model for 2024 in the Ford manufacturer?
Favorite model? I don't know.
I thought I'd get this reaction out of you. I was chuckling when Marie wanted to ask this one because it wasn't in my questions. And I said, Marie, is there anything you want to ask Tim? And right away, we were setting up some sound deadening for the office. And right away, she belted this one out with a big smile on her face. She really wanted to know what your favorite model is. And I chuckled because I figured you're probably like me. And it's like, oh man, that's like such a tough question.
Yeah, because I don't know if I'm the only one, but I don't know what you drive, what you like. So I wanted to know it tonight.
Well, I'm a huge fan, so I know what you drive.
Yeah, you know.
I drive a lot, too many things. I think the Bronco. The Bronco is, I think, fun because you can take it off road and it rides really good in town. It can flip the top back, and I don't have to. Mustang, convertible is nice, but I don't like getting in and out of them. So the Bronco's a lot, a lot easier to get in and out of. I don't know. I do like the Bronco. Our Bronco. It sat for the winter and. For a long time while I drove the electric vehicle and the Lightning and such, but I got back on the Bronco. I'm like, man, why am I not driving this every day? So, but Ford has some great vehicles. They're all fun to drive. The Maverick, the GM and I was just talking about because he has a practice of kind of getting about every vehicle that Ford makes when they first come out. When a Mach-E first came out, he got a Mach-E and drove it for 6 months because usually if you get, an employee pricing, you have to keep that vehicle for 6 months. And so he would get in a vehicle and he would drive it for 6 months. When we got a new product, when, a vehicle came out, when the Maverick came out, he ordered one the first day and EcoBoost got it quickly. He drove it for 6 months. And, he was just saying the other day, he goes, I miss driving that. That drives really good for that price. You can get in an F-150 or a Maverick and, they both drive really good. And, that's a great vehicle as well. So there's some great vehicles. And recently I ordered a Bronco Sport, mainly just so I could do video content, thinking, well,
Wow.
we'll just sell it. I just won't take it. And because you can, the certain package on the Bronco Sport, you cannot order as a retail, or you can't order as a stock. It can only be ordered as retail. So I ordered it, but now I'm thinking I think I might buy it when it comes in. We'll just see, drive it for a little while, put a little lift on it and some nice aggressive tires and show people that you can go off road in it. So we'll see. That one got pushed back 2 months, so we'll see what happens.
Well, Winston's favorite model is it's definitely the Bronco.
Yeah.
For many of the reasons, like you, Tim.
You speak about it.
It's tough, and I'm going to answer Tien Bubba as well as someone else who dropped a comment in here. We didn't get the Ford Maverick recall, and so far we haven't gotten any recalls on our Maverick. We've had it since March, but recalls really never really worry me because I've got to bring the vehicle in for an oil change anyways. So even if I didn't work at a Ford dealership, for me, it's not a big deal to just say, well, honey, I'm going off to the dealership for the oil change. Give me the keys, and saying, hey, take care of whatever recalls. Do whatever you whatever you want while you have it. And if the answer of the dealership is, well, with the recalls, 1, 2, or 3 recalls that are on it, it's going to take us 5 hours. Well, then they lend me a vehicle. So I just, walk across the street to the movie theater, watch a movie or two, and come back. Whether the vehicle's out of my hands for an hour or for 4 hours, it really doesn't change my life whatsoever. Ford dealerships always have these, taxi services basically where they'll drive you, they can bring you to work and then pick you up at the end of your work day. So I don't see recalls as an issue. What I see as an issue is if I think back to, what probably the case that irritates me the most, 1999 and 2000, 2001. Porsche 911 clients would go to the dealership and say, well, my engine blew up and I've got 10,000 miles. And the answer was, well, it's your fault. You raced it too much. You mistreated it too much. You're going to have to buy yourself a new engine. That kind of, blame the consumer, blame the customer attitude. That's what truly bothers me. If I had a 1.6 liter or a 2 liter Hyundai or Kia engine back when they're still in the denial phase, saying, well, no, you know what, that ticking noise coming from your engine, it's totally normal. Just live with it. And they're just hoping that customers would get to the end of their warranty and then it would break at 61,000 miles and they wouldn't have to pay a cent for it. Well, thank goodness that they had no choice but they're forced into extending people's warranty. So I really like the Maverick, and it's a really close second because I think the Maverick is a fantastic bargain. I love how it drives. I love how I can, drive it really quickly in corners. I find the hybrid to be surprisingly quick. Now, the hybrid, someone was saying that they're probably going to buy a Subaru Crosstrek, which isn't a bad option. I like the look of Subarus. I like their practicality. I've always been a little worried when Subaru touches a turbo. It often doesn't end well. Subaru and turbo power, for people that I know, including myself, we haven't always been very lucky when it comes to the turbos. So they're saying that a Subaru Crosstrek, just like the Maverick, tows 1,500. Actually, your Maverick tows 2,000 pounds, even if it's a hybrid, and you don't have to worry about towing the 2,000 pounds with that hybrid because it's an eCVT transmission. And this is why I love the Maverick. Every manufacturer around seems to be rushing into the CVT transmission game. Why? Because it's inexpensive. It's a very inexpensive transmission to manufacture because it's essentially like a Skidoo, whether it's belt driven and it's, whether it's a strap or belt driven and that belt is more of a chain, you could say. Well, when you put strain on that strap or chain, well, with time, even chains, the links, they wear out with time. I've taken apart some old V8 muscle cars, and when you're taking out, when you get to because I want to, put on a bigger, louder cam that burbles and vibrates the vehicle, because, I was just completely convinced when I was younger that that's what it took to get girls and be cool. I got the girl, but I didn't get her with the muscle car. I was out of the muscle car game by then. But I often would come across chains that were just about to be completely torn apart. And I have come across some timing, and at the mechanic shop, I've seen some timing chains that with time do wear out. So CVTs aren't very good for pulling, and long term, they're not great. But the Maverick, I love the fact that it has an eCVT because it's a planetary gear set. You've got one big gear, just like you have on very, very similar to Toyotas. So Toyota's hybrids are very reliable when they're running off an eCVT setup. You've got a big gear with big teeth, and then you've got little gears to help move things along and help simulate gear shifts when they want to through the computing system. But these transmissions, eCVTs, tow really well. You get all the efficiency and you get the fuel savings that you get out of a CVT without all the unreliability and increased chances. I was very good at poker through university, played with friends and sometimes not friends, but it's sort of, I funded part of my university. My fun time was playing poker, and it kind of would fund some of my university. So I've gotten away from gambling since then, but I don't like to take a bad, dangerous bet. And a CVT is a bad, dangerous bet, but I love how the Maverick is fuel efficient, including the EcoBoost and the 2-liter turbo. I think is great because often at, Audi or BMW, they're like, oh, you want a great 4-cylinder engine. Well, they consider their 2-liter turbo to be a premium engine, and you're paying a premium price for that engine. And on the Bronco Sport, which I'm very surprised I can say I really like, even with the 1.5 liter, which my old muscle car heart would say, don't like the 1.5 liter, but I drove it and I like it. And I think it does make a good off-road machine with a lift and some tires. So Tim, I think you're on to something really cool there. The FORD Maverick 2-liter, they're not charging you an arm and a leg to get that. You don't have to go up to the Badlands version, or you don't have to get a decked out Escape, a fully equipped Escape to get into that 2-liter. You've got incredible performance at a real bargain of a price. Now for 2024, it is the standard engine. And I think that is a huge, that's a great present on Ford's part. They could make the Maverick come standard with a 3-cylinder 1.5 liter. It does fit into it. We all know that because it's the same platform. It shares the platform as the Escape. So I think on a value, in the sense to value, the Maverick would be my favorite vehicle when you're considering value and what comes out of the wallet. Now, because I have a YouTube channel and these vehicles are partially tax deductible for the mileage that I use them for the channel, well, the price of the Bronco doesn't really matter to me. And that's why in the end, I like the Bronco the most, because when you're not looking at price, yeah, it's great to be able to just throw off the top, take it off-roading. And we've owned so many Mustangs. We've had about 10 or 12 new Mustangs, probably 15 to 17 Mustangs altogether. But I would always spend my weekend washing them and stressing out whether they would get a rock chip. And they weren't go everywhere, anywhere vehicles. Whereas the Bronco, I don't know what it is, but I can be up in the mountains on a gravel road and just put the pedal to the metal, kick up rocks all over the place, and just have a total carefree, free feeling.
Yeah, and you know that it was bothering me that you need to leave the Mustang in the garage for the winter and buy another car for the winter. The Bronco does all the season. In Canada, it's totally different each season. So yeah, it's perfect with the top down. In the winter, you're comfortable in your SUV, big tires in the snow, good on the ice too. So yeah, definitely the Bronco for me too. You have both good comments about the Bronco, and I totally agree with that.
Each season in Canada is different from each other, but within a season, it can be very different. We've had what would be about 82 degree Fahrenheit right before Christmas in December. We've also seen and that was our part of Canada, but out west in June, middle of June, they had what looked like almost a foot of snow. They had about 8 inches of snow come down. So it's nice to have a vehicle that it doesn't matter what the environment throws at you, you're getting through it. I do hope that Bronco, they are talking about maybe having specialty models. This fire, this isn't a fire edition. It's that Broncos are being, used as fire vehicles. But if ever a fire edition was available to the general public, that'd be a pretty cool special edition. But for me, I'd rather have, honestly, because of the whole go anywhere lifestyle of the Bronco, I'd rather have a plug-in. Like if someone were to offer me a V8 plug-in Bronco or a Lamborghini, I wouldn't even ask which is worth what. I'd take the plug-in V8 Bronco. Now, I'd also be very, very happy with the 2.7 liter plug-in Bronco, but I think the 2.3 liter is going to be more than adequate in regards to there's a lot of potential for having an incredible amount of torque and almost too much torque, because you could have more torque in a 2.3 liter plug-in Bronco than you have in the Raptor, in the 3-liter V6 twin turbo. So I'm still really keeping my fingers crossed. Tim, what would you say? What do you think our chances are of getting a plug-in Bronco? And if you had to guess a year.
A year? I don't know. Probably that when it's ready for its mid-year, like refresh. What would that be? 20,
2025 or
25?
2026?
Probably 25. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think they've got a. Since Jeep has one, they're probably looking at it. I don't know. So I'm not sure what combination. I mean, with that, I don't even know what combination it'd be because right now they don't. The only plug-in they make is the 2.5, right?
Yep.
Is that right? So
That's right.
they'd have to be a 2.5 plug-in. I don't know. That's doesn't seem like a good comparison because usually you see a 2.0 Eco and or a 2.5 plug-in, but you don't typically see a going from a 2.3. So hopefully they make a new upgraded plug-in. I don't know. It'd be nice to see. I don't know. At least a high. I mean, even a hybrid, but I don't know because I think some people are concerned that with an off-road vehicle that it needs power, it needs all the torque and everything, but really on the trail you're better off having something like an EV would actually do really well because a lot of people think, well, you hear of the EVs having all this power and how fast they can go off the line, but that doesn't mean that's the only way they can be driven. So they can have you can easily just take off how you need to in an EV or a plug-in if you have it in that mode. So it'd be really nice to take that on the trail in a full EV mode, and it would probably be the best situation. So hopefully we'll see it soon. I don't know. My guess, maybe 25. I don't know. Again, that's a guess because Ford
My
doesn't
guess
tell
would
us
also
anything.
be at the mid-model refresh, and I can't remember if this was my imagination or if there was a bit of insider talk. Let's say even if it was insider talk, I shouldn't say it was insider talk, so I should say either way it's my imagination. But I remember distinctly there was talk, and there wasn't any talk about timeline, but that a plug-in would need to come to the Ford Ranger as well as the Bronco. And because back then there was no 2.7 liter for the Ford Ranger, this my imagination, not inside talk, made me think, oh, well, the only shared engine between the Ranger and the Bronco is the 2.3 liter. So I kind of made an assumption that, well, if I were to gamble, my gamble would be that it would come to the 2.3 liter. But now that the 2.7 liter is going to be also available for the Ranger. And because who knows, maybe one day we'll get a Ranger Raptor R. I've heard nothing of that. But if I were to personally build a Ranger Raptor R, knowing that you can't really fit a 3.5 liter V6 into a Ranger frame without, completely, modifying that frame and making the vehicle literally wider, also the same problem for the Bronco, if I recall correctly. If I wanted to make an R version of a Raptor or a Ranger Raptor and not take away from the wow factor of the 3-liter V6, which has incredible sound, to the point where I put my mouth where my money is. I've put it down an order on a Ranger Raptor. But if I were to see an R version, I certainly wouldn't mind if it was a 2.7 liter plug-in, because yeah, like Tim says, plugins can be incredible for off-roading because of that low end torque, especially if you have, you can program these things to have an off-road mode. And if your off-road mode, if you still have enough battery remaining in off-road mode, the whole computing system can be programmed so that battery is used specifically at low speeds to help you overcome obstacles. Or because and it's weird because torque application when you're off-roading, if you're in sand, you don't want to apply a whole lot of torque immediately because you'll just dig down. Whereas if you're rock crawling, well, then you do want to have immediate torque. You don't necessarily want to you really don't want to have to work into it because you don't want to have speed when you rock crawl. Speed and rock crawling is, a great formula for rolling the vehicle or flipping it backwards. A lot of bad things can happen when you add rock crawling and speed together.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the next question, we want to know, Tim, what do you think about the Ford recalls?
You know, we started covering the recalls, but like this week, I started looking at them closer, and what they were saying is a lot of these aren't recalls as much as like emissions, compliance and customer satisfaction things that come out. There's not, I mean, there are some recalls, but it's all wanting to protect the customers, and I think they play on they'd rather put a recall out, and make sure that vehicle is good for their customers and safe for their vehicle for their customers than to wait for the government to tell them. Of course, the government will make them eventually, but Ford wants to get ahead of it and take care of it and to make it right. So, I don't know. Like this week, I was like looking for recalls for my live stream on Wednesday night, and I saw that there's only one recall, and it's just an update to recall. All the other ones that have come out are like customer satisfactions, where they're doing this and just to kind of make things better and to help customers out. But I guess that's the way I look at it is I never really am fearful if I hear a recall. I mean, I think my Bronco's got a recall on it, and I haven't gotten a letter, and I'm just like, whatever. I just keep driving it. And then the lightning for the back glass, but like they're saying that if you have a lariat that on the tailgate, that it can get water, moisture can get in there, and mine has that. Mine has the moisture in there, but I don't feel like it's going to affect my backup light. So I never really think about that way, but I'm not really worried about it. I'm going to continue to drive it. So it's one of those things that I guess I don't get as concerned about those as maybe some others do. I mean, when they hear the fear of the fire and such, maybe, but
Yeah.
but most of the recalls are minor recalls that are just just a precaution, more than anything.
Yeah, and it's better to be fixed than having an issue. So the recalls
Yeah.
are fine to me, I guess.
Yeah.
I know
we had
that
a
she
Maverick
would do the same.
we had a Maverick in today getting the airbag recall done. So they had the headliner down, and they were doing that. So and that's been out for a little while. So
Yeah, now that's a fantastic example of recalls that, whether it's the Institute for Highway Safety, the government essentially that calls the recall, or the manufacturer. If I recall my math being 11 millimeters of overinflation on an airbag, and you had YouTube channels being like, this is it for the Maverick. The Maverick's done, major safety recall, and talking as if the Maverick was a bad vehicle. And, that upset me because they're not looking at the facts. And you got to ask yourself, how does this apply to my life? How is this going to affect me? Well, I obviously can't replace Marie. I'll never do this good again. So if the Maverick truly was a dangerous vehicle, there'd be no way I'd want Marie driving the Maverick. Plus, carrying our future kid. And I'm not worried at all about the Maverick catching fire or an airbag overinflating for 11 millimeters, because at the end of the day, even if that airbag went off with an extra 11 millimeters, at a certain point, everything needs to fall into parameters, and you have to say, this is the allowed parameter. I'm not a crash test expert, but I can't imagine 11 millimeters, which is next to nothing, being the difference between life and death. It might decide whether the bruise on your nose is medium blue or a slightly darker hue of blue when the airbag goes off, but not a big issue. And Ford has a lot of, whether we want to call them recalls or service bulletins, there's lots of service bulletins just to make your ownership experience better. But some of them are, on the Bronco, there's the ease of getting your seatbelt. We saw the emissions recall go by for Super Duties recently. And like Tim says, doesn't affect him whatsoever. If you have a Super Duty and you have a recall in regards to emissions, well, you're going to go in for an oil change, and they're going to spend maybe an extra 30, 40 minutes with the vehicle. And even if it's 2 hours, let's say they have to flash the computer system and reboot a whole new program into it. Worst case scenario, you lose the vehicle for an extra hour or two. It doesn't affect your life whatsoever. And a lot of these recalls but a lot of businesses survive on this type of information. For example, Consumer Reports, they're not going to sell their subscription if their news is, hey, Dodge Ram, the Ram 1500 is now our pick, but the F-150 is still really awesome. They're not going to sell with titles like that. They sell with titles with, we recommend you don't buy an F-150. And then the reasoning for that is the handling, the ride comfort, and reliability. And reliability is based on how they calculate reliability, which is very interesting in and out of itself. But it's funny because a few years ago, they very well might have been saying that the F-150 was the number one truck to buy. But then oddly, it's like, well, the suspension hasn't changed, but now they don't like it. Oh, the ride comfort, they used to say it was, really good, but now they don't like it. So I have a lot of trouble with information that's more about making bank for your own personal wallet instead of giving good quality advice to consumers. And we'll get at the end of this live, if there's still a little bit of time, because we're already at about an hour, so we'll probably be wrapping up the show soon enough. But we'll talk more about Consumer Reports and JD Power the JD Power. We'll talk about those surveys quickly and briefly at the end of the show, so just so we can put it into its own episode and just so we can sort of stay on topic while we've got Tim in front of us. Unless, Maddie, you tell me I should just cover it right now. So I've got maybe 2 minutes of material.
The last part we wanted to speak about is some news.
Oh, so great. So
you're already there.
I'm already there. So let me just open it up. I always have these slides kicking around somewhere. So really interesting, I feel. Let's say we open up this slide right here and you see, JD Power 2023 US Initial Quality Study putting Dodge Ram and Alfa Romeo as, in their opinion, the most reliable vehicles that you can have out there. And, Tim, I hope this doesn't bother you. It doesn't, that I'm talking about this. JD Power can be mad at me. Tim, this is not Tim Bartz's opinion. This is my bone to pick, but I truly have trouble imagining that an Alfa Romeo is more reliable than a Toyota or a Lexus. I'd say Alfa Romeo is historically and notoriously, I'd even say infamously known for being steaming piles of hot garbage that are beautiful. I was looking at an Alfa Romeo 4C. Instead of picking up the Bronco Wild Track, which I'm getting in at the dealership under my ordered name. So I'm like, oh, I've got, and I love the vehicle. But I was like, I'd also really love an Alfa Romeo 4C. It's probably a future, very collectible vehicle. But then I asked myself, what are the chances I keep it long enough to make money on it? I can't personally... I consume vehicles at a rate that makes it that I can't have that sit in my garage for 10, 12 years. And Marie's always going to be saying things like, oh, well, can you paint this baby crib in the garage? And if there's a car sitting there, it's going to make me nervous painting on one side of my double garage, the side, an Alfa Romeo 4C. But the thing is essentially a Ferrari with a smaller 4-cylinder engine. So it's incredible, but it's a hot pile of garbage. Same thing for a Mini long-term. Minis are horrible vehicles to own. A Mini is a fine vehicle if you want to go lease one and you like that look.
Cost a lot on reparation.
You've told me before that you found the Mini cute, and I told you to stop talking politely. I was like, no, I don't want to hear it, honey. Don't. I don't want to get into a fight.
That car.
I'm like, don't even talk about. When I see a Mini go by, I either want you to not say anything, or I want to hear like a noise.
It was just cute because the new neighbors has too many different. They had a black one and a red one in their driveway. That's so cute, but. For sure, it was...
one died, by the way. Yeah, one died.
It's the sound in the morning. It's like a tractor was turning on the switch.
And it died. It left on a tow truck. And
you saw that?
it left on a tow truck, honey, and it never came back.
No, it did a horrible sound each morning.
So Dodge and Ram are not the most long-term reliable vehicles out there, and Alfa Romeo is a real joke, folks, to be number 3. However, how do they calculate this? It's not because they're bad people, it's because they're dealing with new vehicles and they're using the data that they can get their hands on. And the readily easy to get data is how many problems do you have per 100 people? So you've got Dodge at 140 problems per 100 people, and you've got Alfa Romeo at 143 problems per 100 people. And yeah, in Alfa Romeo, the vehicles aren't the technology, the touchscreens in them aren't complicated. A lot of the models don't even have touchscreens. So someone's not going to go to the dealership saying, hey, I've got a problem. My touchscreen is broken. The Bluetooth is broken. When often it's just that they've got the Bluetooth off on their phone, or their phone is acting funny, because these are very small laptops and they need to be reset. Really, you should turn them off every single night. But some people will have had this running for the last year and a half, 2 years, and then the communication is no longer viable between the phone and the vehicle. And it's not that the vehicle is broken, but we now have a problem, a problem being added. You're part of that, let's say Dodge here at 140 problems per 100 people, you're adding on to that list. And that's how, JD Power, initial quality study, that's how it works. That's part of the whole deciding factor to Consumer Reports reliability. They're really looking at the problems people have. They're not looking at what types of problems. You can have models in here that blow motors on a consistent basis as soon as they get to 150 or 200 miles or even less, and it wouldn't appear as a problem, because we're talking about just essentially problems in the first year. And there's no differentiation between what kind of problems we have, and there's no weighting to those problems. Very few of these makes are going to have blown motors in the first year. And actually, all of these manufacturers are going to have blown motors in their first year, but they're going to be in very, very rare, small percentages. And even if they were in relatively high percentages, let's say one of these manufacturers had a model that had, this doesn't happen, but let's say 5%, 1 out of 20 of their engines would blow. One, it's probably not going to happen in its first year. It's not even really going to show up. And if it did, if it was high enough of a ratio to show up, it would still get balanced out with people having problems with their Bluetooth, or with, heck, I've had it on my F-150 Lightning. I actually even had it on my Bronco. Turned on my Bronco one morning. The computer didn't want to load up the touchscreen for whatever reason. Probably because it was minus 40 degrees outside. And if I would have slept outside, I'd be dead. So how can I really have a bone to pick with my vehicle? But as soon as my vehicle warmed up and I turned the vehicle off and turned it back on, well, then the touchscreen did turn on. Well, if I go to the dealership, make a complaint, I'm on this list. My complaint isn't reasonable. It was minus 40 in Canada. Everything that was outside is now dead. Dead.
Or so slow.
or very slow. Nothing lives in these temperatures. And my vehicle just needed to warm up before being able to boot up the touchscreen. It happened to me twice in an entire winter on the Bronco. Had I made a complaint, my complaint would, fall onto this list.
So if I recap what you said, it's a big problem and small problem are in the same box.
Yes. And manufacturers now are everyone's mostly building pretty much all very, very good vehicles. Everyone has a very small percentage of vehicles that will have blown motors or blown transmissions, but this is why we have warranties. These things happen. You have to remember, they're not building these aren't built by hand by a team of, 7 engineers that have 1 year to build 10 vehicles together. No, these are mass produced. Just like when we buy a pair of sneakers, you can have a sneaker company make 1 million pairs of sneakers, and there'll be a few of those pairs of sneakers that once they get wet, for whatever reason, they'll fall apart. It's just part of the manufacturing process, and it cannot be avoided. But one very interesting truth in all of this is if we look at previous years, so this is actually worth considering. So there's a question in this coming towards you, Tim. In 2023, we've got 140 problems per person for the number one spot. And let's go see what it was in 2019. 2019, we had 63 problems per 100 people for the number one spot. Ford was at 83 problems per 100 people. So Ford was almost at the top of J.D. Power's, reliability quality list. What do you think's happened since 2019 to 2023?
More electronics, got more power, got bigger screens, and now we're moving everything into the screens, instead of having so many buttons and everything. I mean, yeah, that's probably the big thing. And also maybe it's the ownership too, because like you said, it's it's for everything that's once it's counting every little thing that you're saying is wrong. Okay, well, the airbag light came on and the check engine light came on and all these things, so those all count as multiple things instead of, like I said, they can be minor things that they just reset with a system reboot, and then but the major ones is what I like to see. What's the cost? I'd love to see like service ticket prices on these things, and let's compare it that way instead of per orders. But yeah, when I saw it was like over 100 per 100, I'm like, wow, that seems high. Like even number one seemed high. I'm like,
yeah,
that means
absolutely.
everybody's has at least one problem, which floors me.
Well, I think you're completely right. I think vehicles have become significantly more complex. And I also think since we all got, locked away in our own homes for months at end, I think we all became more complex ourselves. We all became a little bit more Karen, the typical mean of Karen complaining to the manager. We all have less patience. We all have, far more demands. Our demands have gone up while our patience has gone down. And when demands go up and patience goes down, the result is you have people being more often not just saying, I'm not going to sweat the small stuff. No, since 2019, because of everything that's happened, people do sweat the small stuff. People are really willing and often almost ready to get into a fist fight over the small stuff. People, I remember I've been doing this, and I used to help manage the residences at a university, and we originally saw the transition of people probably a little earlier than a lot of other businesses. But we went from a time when parents would be like, can't you give more discipline to my child? Like, can't you punish them more? Like, my child really needs to learn that rules are rules and they should never be broken. To, my child would never break any rules. How dare you? I'm gonna sue you. I'm gonna bring you to court and sue you for everything you're worth because you're accusing my child of doing something they would never do. And it's like, well, we have cameras. How could you be filming my child? I'm going to take you to court and sue you for filming my child. And it's like, well, it's in the small print that your adult child signed. And, so things have
changed a lot.
Things have changed. And, if we go back historically, you used to go to school and you'd be all in one building, in one room, and the teacher would use a ruler and, hit the ruler on your hand. And, I remember I've received a wooden paddle on my backside once or twice when I was a young lad, but nowadays my parents would go to jail for that kind of thing. So times change, and they don't necessarily always change for the better. And there's always pros and cons to everything. So maybe we're a bit more sensitive of a society and we let things work us up a little bit more. But what I would propose is, Tim, you and I need to start a company. And, if we want to copy the initials here, JD, we'd have to follow the same order, but we'd have to call it JT, Johnny and Tim's quality, and we'd have to look at the data, like you said, we have to look at the data of what is it costing people? How much money? And whether it's costing people or the manufacturer, the real question is what broke? How much did it cost? When I buy a vehicle, I want to know if I'm going to own this for the next 20 years, on average, what can I expect to pay into the vehicle? Because unfortunately, so many consumers when they're shopping, and we see because the Toyota Tacoma is selling about 200,000 units a year. And they're selling 200,000 units a year when they're consuming more fuel. If you had a medium to heavy foot, you're consuming more fuel in a Tacoma than a 2.7 liter Ford F-150. The 2.7 liter Ford F-150 towing, capability of towing 10,000 pounds was getting kind of quite a bit better fuel economy. And people will often they won't think about what is this going to cost me at the end of every single year. They're just thinking, for example, what is this going to cost me per month as a payment? And then they also like the idea, a lot of people I think like the idea of, well, I like the Toyota Tacoma because the thing's never going to break. But if it ends up costing you an extra, over 20 years, if you spend an extra $8,000-9,000 in fuel or more, you might even spend, compared to some vehicles, definitely spend a good $7,000 to $8,000 over a 12 to 15 year period driving a Tacoma compared to a 2.7 liter EcoBoost Ford, and you'll have a whole lot more fun in that F-150 2.7 liter EcoBoost because that is a very torquey engine. And we can't say that to be true for, just most Toyota products, period. Despite me, I love some Toyota products, but, power they're getting into the power game now, and I'm impressed.
Yeah. You know what? I saw a comment from M. Baker here that I love. He said, maybe more reading of the manual will help all of us. I agree with that. I was reading my Maverick manual and Johnny was saying, hey, don't read that. You don't need it. I was like, no, I want to understand my car. So I won't be the one who will be complaining at the dealership because I read the instructions. So thank you, M. Baker.
Alrighty. Well, we could, Tim, would you be comfortable? Did you have any news before I continue on with the news? I don't want to be the only one like deciding where this goes. Did you have one or two pieces of news that you really feel that we need to address?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
Not really. I mean, I guess have you gotten all the information on what's different for the Maverick for 24? Have you heard?
Yes.
You've got that.
That is huge news. Yeah.
So what is your thought on the Lariat trim? I think that's the biggest one that gets me.
Yeah. Personally, it's hard for me to comment on that one because I've never been a Ford Maverick Lariat shopper. So because I've never really been personally in the process of buying one, it's hard for me to speak to that. As a dealership, I can say I like it because it's sort of like, well, Lariat equals luxury, and there's less options. I'm hoping long term, a little more profit. I hope this helps lower costs because Ford is moving in a long term direction of not having a million different F-150s that can exist. They need to cut that down by about almost a tenth in order to cut down cost. So I do like the idea of costs being cut down so that the long-term price of these vehicles don't go up. And I do like the idea that, if you go Lariat, you get, it's less complicated. It's just, here's your Lariat Maverick. It's more in line with Toyota, but I don't want to, I hope we don't ever end up getting quite to where Toyota is because Toyota is just basically, here's your model, pick your trim, and once your trim's pick your color, it's game over. And I've always said in the past in other shows, I've said that's something I don't like about Toyota. But oddly, I ordered a Ford Ranger and had the best ordering experience I've ever had ordering a Ford in my life. And I've been doing this for, whatever it is, 20 years for new vehicles because the Bronco was I lost 15% of my hair trying to order a Bronco. I spent months and months, and I wasn't an original orderer. I ordered what must have been 6-7 months late, because it took me 6-7 months to figure out
Yeah.
and be comfortable. And even then I
You
continued.
did the puzzle.
I made, just like, just like how engineers shop vehicles, you're in the sales game, so you know all about how engineers shop vehicles. I had to literally make different tables with all the pros and cons, and then find numerical values for those pros and cons to actually come up with an overall score. So I kind of felt a little bit like Doug DeMuro, putting an overall score on these things, but it was too complex, and it gave me a real headache for months. And even to this day, I don't even know if I made the right choice, and it still bothers me. Whereas the Ranger Raptor, I was just like, green, honey, which mags look better? She told me which mags she liked,
It
and I was like,
easy.
great, that's how the order sits at right now, done. And it was the fastest Ford vehicle I've ever ordered in my life. How about you, Tim? What do you think about the whole Lariat?
Well, I see what they're doing. So they kind of took and looked at what most people are ordering and going off of that. But I think what that's going to do is I see, like, to your benefit, or like what you're saying is, I think, a good thing. We did notice that most of the Lariats that we put in, almost everybody chose the luxury package, and the Copilot 360 was required if you had the luxury. So we did see most people that went Lariat added a luxury package anyway. So a lot of people are like, well, that's what I was already going to order. I still think the Copilot 360 Assist package should be available in XLT, but still, that to me, that's not a big surprise either. I was a little shocked that they went from, learning from their mistakes from 22 when they went to 23 by taking off the spray and bed liners out of those luxury packages, to 24 adding them back in. So I'm like, let's take what you learned in 22 and not repeat your mistakes, but we're going to do it anyway in 24. So I'm going to say it right here. So make sure we keep this recorded and keep this online, because I believe there's going to be constraints in 24 with anybody that has an XLT luxury and such. And
Absolutely.
Let's talk about that too, because I actually emailed the brand manager and said, I hope that you think this through, because you're adding the drop-in liner as included in the XLT luxury package. So there are people that do not want that. And if you look, and they said it was based on how people ordered, but that's not true, because if you look at the order sheet, or if you look at the capacity sheet, and even I have it here, it shows only 5% of the orders have the drop-in liner added to it. 5%. That is a very low take rate to make it part of a package now. So what are these people that, were okay with the luxury without any bed liner? Now they have to take the drop-in liner, and it's going to cost them an extra, $300, $400. I think that's a huge mistake, in my opinion. But I emailed them and said, you might think this through. Order guide's not set in stone yet. Maybe you should change it now before it's too late, because I think that's a major mistake, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's I like to prefix what I'm saying these days as the order guide is the it's the automobile Bible. It is truly what decides. And unlike the Bible can't change with time, certainly shouldn't, but the order guide actually can. They can choose to make changes later on. So there is still time to change that order guide. And one thing that I think Ford, when they're looking at the data, is forgetting is that there's, you and I, who spent a couple of years telling people, don't put on a drop-in bed liner, don't put on a spray-in bed liner, don't put a cover, don't put, clear wrap, ditch the hitch. So all their data is completely skewed, and it's not representative of what people actually want, because people weren't ordering smart orders, smart people who are considering truly getting their Maverick and doing the homework so that they get their Maverick in a timely manner, weren't ordering what they want. They're ordering what they could have. So if you base your idea of what people want on really what they didn't want, it just doesn't work. I don't know how to put this into proper words. I don't even think I could say it in French, but essentially the data they're looking at is skewed. It does not represent what people want. It represents what people could get. I haven't had Yeah, and no, I talk to people, the entire sales team. So otherwise, I think if I didn't work at my local dealership, I don't know if the sales guys, you have sales guys, you ask them to work 12 hours a day plus their commute to work, so they're away from their families for 13 to 14 hours a day. They're answering emails when they're in bed at night at 11 at night. They're picking up phone calls before their work shift starts. I don't I think it's normal that, not every single sale. I think it'd be very abnormal if most sales guys spent their time watching Tim's channel or my channel. They already don't have lives and their families already do miss them enough. But uh, we certainly have a community of viewers and consumers that watch us. And at my dealership, of course, I tell everyone, hey, tell your clients, don't get this on your order. So basically, everyone was, you know, they're kind enough to listen to me. But a lot of dealerships have that one obsessed guy on the team telling the other guys, hey, I watch Tim's channel or I watch Johnny's channel. Tell your customers not to put these on their order. So it's just the whole system doesn't work. I think what would work is if they actually ask people like Tim and said, "Hey Tim," or they ask people like myself, "What do people really want?" And I can tell you, a lot of people, we've been selling trucks for years. A lot of people really like the spray and bed liner, but whether it's a spray and bed liner or a drop in bed liner or just a bed mat, as long as there's global issues, what's going on over in Europe and Asia is a major issue. And we have to remember that Russia is for a lot of the plastic and a lot of oil products, they're the primary source. So if we're having issues, global political issues, we're going to continue to have issues getting plastic products.
That's true. And I saw a lot tonight in the chat question about the change in the model for the Maverick 2024. And people wants to know what Johnny and Tim thinks about the price increase with the Maverick 2024. So Tim, I'll let you answer first.
I'm not surprised where it's at. I mean, I think what, Ford's probably looking and going, okay, well, we know that people are willing to spend more, go over MSRP to buy these vehicles. So it's, why not let them share in some of this? So I think the value of what the Maverick is, I think the value is people are paying them over MSRP because that's where the value of that vehicle is. So is it in that $30,000 range? Well, probably so. And now what Ford's doing is that they think that market value is still there, so they're just taking some of the dealer profit out, in my opinion. And so, and that's fine, let Ford have some of that profit, and the dealers can, share in that, whatever. But yeah, I'm not really shocked that it went up some. I mean, it's still, you're looking there, you got the prices behind you. So you have what was that? The XL is still at under 25,000.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not bad. And you're getting, and again, we're going to remember, we're getting cruise, we're getting full power, we're getting Bluetooth connectivity. We're getting all the things that, most people, need, and maybe not everything they want, but it's everything that they can. I mean, for under 25, I was doing my member lot walk last week. There's an Escape. I think it was an Escape Active. It was just under 30, 29.9 or something, or 28.9, somewhere in there. So I was comparing. There's the Active. That would be a comparable to an XLT Maverick. What's the XLT Maverick at now on yours for like a hybrid? Was it 26 still?
XLT front wheel, XLT front wheel drive hybrid, 29,410.
So it'd be, I look at it saying, in my opinion, it's comparable to an Escape. And I think when you're looking at it, I think the new 23 Escape, by the way, is really good. What they've done, I think, is phenomenal on that. And I compare them to that. Like, do you want an SUV or a truck? Because in my opinion, they're about the same vehicle in a way of quality and some of the equipment and everything. Although the Escape does have much upgraded screens, which I'd like to see that happen to Maverick next year. But in 25. But price-wise, I think they were too cheap before. I think that's why we saw so much demand. And a lot of people are saying, well, this will take away some of the demand, because some people will be like, oh, I went that way because I could save $2,000 or $3,000. But now that they're the same price as maybe something else that I also like, I'll just go that route. And so, I don't think they're still gonna be able to fulfill every order they have, but this way maybe you don't have as high a demand with less people getting their vehicles. I don't know.
I do know. I think you've said it really well. And I'd summarize it as be careful what you wish for. Because for years now, people have said, how dare, of course, we're all Karens since from what happened 3 years ago, being cooped up. But, we went full Karen and we were like, how dare Ford offer the Ford Maverick but not have them available in the yard? And how dare they have F1, one particular Karen on YouTube has this title and they're repeating it now, but it's, Ford doesn't want to build Mavericks because they want to force you into an F-150. And it's like, that's basically what the title says. And it's the premise of their, very, very popular, I don't know if they're at a few million views now, but they must be. But then a whole bunch of other YouTubers jump on it and they borrow the title of Ford doesn't want to sell Mavericks. They only want to sell F-150s, and they completely ignore the fact that the F-150 has been out for decades. They've got 2 huge factories building this, and that the Ford Maverick has 1 factory, and that demand was unbelievably high. So it's sort of one of those beware of what you wish for, because if you're really mad and red in the face at Ford that they don't have any available Ford Mavericks, but they're building 11,000 in a month, really what you're saying is, what you're asking for is for the price to go up, because the result of this is demand will go down a little, because right now demand is they need a F-150. They can probably sell 500,000 Mavericks per year. So you'd need 1.5 F-150 factories to build the Ford Maverick. To build a new factory, it's a few $1 billion easily. They don't get built overnight. This isn't a fake hospital being built in 1 week in China. They actually, these are actual factories and state of the art when you build a new one. So they can't get built overnight. You can't necessarily just look into the Ford's couch when in front of the TV at Ford's home. They're not going to find $5, $6, $7, $8 billion sitting in the cracks of the couch. So they would need a factory. So I think the increase in price, yeah, why not take it away from the dealers that are asking for more? And really, they're asking more because that's just what the market says it's worth. Your Maverick, Maddie, was supposed to be $37,695.
Canadian.
You got $3,800 off of it because you waited 18 months for it. But now you can sell it for probably about $45,000. So you can make $10,000 to $12,000 because, well, that's the market value of your Ford Maverick. And it's not as if Ford is increasing these prices by $10,000 to the actual market, what the market's willing to pay. They're just increasing the price somewhat to somewhat cool off demand.
Yeah, and I would add that the increase for the 2024 is totally normal to me, because we had inflation this year that was bigger. And since the beginning, I heard you said that it's a most affordable little truck. So yeah.
Most affordable vehicle, period.
Yeah, it was so a good price that maybe they just arrange it normal now.
Far more
with the inflation.
Even then, it's still, the prices on Honda Civics and whatnot have gone up. And what I said from day one is essentially, this is priced like a Honda Civic, but far more practical. And you can actually get better fuel economy out of your Ford Maverick that can tow 2,000 pounds than a Honda Civic. And you've got space.
It's hybrid.
And it's hybrid. So it was awesome. I heard you drive away today, and well, I didn't really hear you drive away. I heard the tires because you're in electric mode. So it's pretty cool product.
Yeah.
Good. Do you have any other news that you wanted to talk about?
Let me just quickly go down into the slides, because I think that pretty much covers all the, well, we could say the urgent stuff, because I felt it was urgent to talk about price. So I'm happy Tim brought it up, because I definitely wanted to cover that in the show. Just to summarize a bit of news, I was going through different Maverick because I was trying to figure out what I can sell your Maverick and looking at different prices for Broncos. And I came across this dealership that says new GM general manager at, X Ford, age units need to go previously at over MSRP dealer. Bonehead mistake caused high demand units to sit. Our mistake is your gain. Order anything you want at 500 under MSRP. And it kind of goes back to the point that I've said not too often, but once in a while I have mentioned that a lot of the dealers that are asking way over MSRP now are also the dealers that were selling most of their units at cost or near cost and were really struggling to stay open. And I don't understand how there hasn't been a bit more either collaboration in regards to the manufacturers picking a price and saying, you know what, dealers, this is the price you're going to sell it at. And I know it's difficult because of a fair, free, open market and the laws, but the dealers often aren't helping themselves either because they starve for 10 years on, if we look at how often the market works, you've got a market that's sort of so for 8 to 10 years. And you have 1 or 2 hot years on the market where everyone's making more money on the stock market. Stocks go up usually every out of 10 years. There'll be 2 amazing years out of the 10 years. Everyone feels like they're super wealthy because their portfolio grew by 30%. And then the dealers that were basically closing their doors then fleece everybody for 2 years. And it's a point of frustration for me. I think there should be a bit more collaboration and that the goal needs to be that everyone gets a fair price, that the dealers can survive, but that the customers get a fair price as well. And I think only the manufacturer can really figure out what that sweet spot is. Every month, anyways, they're already doing it. Every month, they're figuring what promotions do we need to move metal. So anyways, I think there needs to be a bit more collaboration on the market. Now, there was one big piece of news that I really like. And I want to ask the expert here before we say good night. But Tim, what do you think about this spy photo of a lowered FORD Maverick?
Well, did they confirm whether or not that was from Ford? Like, because sometimes it could be other people. Because there's been a lot of people do custom trucks. In fact, we're gonna tomorrow night, or not tomorrow night, I guess it's Wednesday night. We're gonna talk about one that we're working on at Law MacArthur. But to do it, we need a vehicle. So that's the hard part. It's getting a vehicle, and we know somebody else that's working on something like that as well. Out of some of the manufacturers that we're going to go talk to in July or later this month as well. But I don't know. Is that because I didn't actually see that, but is that one of the Ford vehicles driving around from the plant?
Motor One, which isn't, for me, I take something as fact if it comes from Car and Driver, unless it's their opinion and they're just giving a vehicle a score out of 10. But when it comes to proper reporting, yes, Lily, we love the Maverick. Motor One is saying that this is a Ford-owned vehicle, but they themselves say manufacturers will often modify a vehicle just to take your attention away from something else. So they're saying, a couple of test vehicles don't mean Ford will ever produce it, and the lowered ride height could be a cover for some other test. In Motor One's words, because I'm quoting them, automakers are tricky like that. And it's true. Sometimes Ford will be testing a test mule Corvette, but it doesn't mean that we're going to get the Thunderbird or a variation of the Thunderbird back and that we're going to have a 2-seater competitor for the Corvette. Ford could continue to say that the Mustang is an excellent competitor for the Corvette. And I know I've had some people purchase a Mustang because they go, well, I want performance, but I like the back seat. So I was deciding between a Corvette and a Mustang, but I'll go Mustang because it has that back seat. Just like, when we were looking at 911s before we found out that we were having a child, we were kind of stuck between the 718 GTS or Spider 718 versus the 911. Then now that we're going to have a kid, we're like, well, does a baby seat fit in the 911? Because I'm not the type of guy to say, honey, I'm leaving for 2 days because I want to go cruise in the mountains on those windy roads at really high speeds while leaving you and the child at home. Maybe I'll make it back. Depends.
I'll follow you with the Maverick.
Depends how much grip that Porsche 911 gives me, which if it wasn't for technology would be zero grip because the engine's actually behind the wheels, which is actually on an engineering level, a horrible decision. And really, they're just reusing a Volkswagen Beetle frame. But that's a different story for a different day. I always love the history of vehicles.
Well, I know that the Ford call, the broadcasts, they actually talked about future products, and they said there will not be an all-wheel drive hybrid for 24, and there will not be an ST or a plug-in hybrid. So they said that's not happening for 24. But they did say, and they wouldn't talk about future products, but they did say there's some good things coming in 25, which would be the the mid-gen, right? Refresh.
Yeah, the mid-model refresh.
Yeah, so I mean, I see, maybe something happened. I know, well, I don't know, but I figured out, I think that some people don't know this, but Roush is basically, if you see an ST or a Ford Performance out there, then Roush has their hand in that. So they actually help produce, like right now, Roush is the ones that help produce the motor for the 5.0 in the Mustang. Roush actually makes that motor at their plant and such. And then some of the other stuff, like if you see an ST, any of those Roush usually has their hand. So I actually, said, well, we heard that maybe you guys are working on an ST version of the Maverick. And they were like, the look on their face was just like, you just gave it away. So I think they're trying to work on something, but whether or not it's going to be ready, how soon. So maybe 25, I don't know.
And it's a great reminder. I saw there's a great conversation going on in the live chat. Our show is all like your show. Sometimes the live chat, I can say that, on my show, I sometimes go back and I'm like, wow, the live chat was actually better than what I was covering. So someone actually very adequately, and great to see all the regulars in here, the WB, Ridgeview, Marine Vet. And good to have M. Peugeot back asking if saying that we can always have the nanny. The baby can ride with the nanny, but M. Peugeot, here's the thing: we generally have between $2,000 to $3,000 worth in automobile payments in our driveway.
Can't afford a nanny.
And the channel YouTube, my justification is YouTube, but I generally make, I'd say, probably about an average of about $24.50 per YouTube video. So it's not quite covering that $2,000 to $3,000 in automobile payments in the yard. So thank you, M. Peugeot, though, for the vote of confidence that we could afford that nanny. But if we had, normal vehicles, yeah, we probably could. But even nowadays, a normal vehicle, slowly, I think, I hate to say this, and I hate to be right about this, but I think slowly we're all going to be priced out of, many of us will be priced out of home ownership as well as automobile ownership. And if certain groups have their ways, we are going to see a world where a good percentage of the population is renting most everything. So I'm not surprised to see, whether, and once again, you'll have YouTube videos saying Ford's prices are ridiculous, so they're doomed. No, the market's prices have gone up. Vehicles that were once $500 a month are now $800 or $750 a month. And that's over a 3-year period. Whereas previously, if I go back to a 1995 Windstar, you got a 1995 Windstar, I think it was maybe $250 per month for a nicely equipped model. And it took, 15 years to have a very similar vehicle. If you go from 1995 to a 2015 Escape, so you've got 20 years in there, and you had the Escape, which was similarly equipped to that 95 Windstar, being $500. So over 15 years, the price essentially doubled. Well, now the price has gone up by about 35% over 4 years. So we'll see if that trend continues. I know I'm buying vehicles like there's no tomorrow because I'm worried that tomorrow I won't be able to afford vehicles. So thank you very much, M. Peugeot. Well, I'll let Marie thank you since she
twice as much today. Thank you so much.
So $24.95. That is twice as much, and actually that's in US dollars. So really, it's
more than that.
Yeah, it's like 3 times as much. So thank you very much. That's very kind. So yes, in regards to the nanny, the really good comment that I want to point out, I've almost forgotten it because I got on one of my rants, which people have said should be its own show on its own, Johnny's rants. But yeah, Yeah, I've completely lost it. There was a really good question in there that I wanted to address.
That's fine. Maybe we will be able to search it another time.
Well, we can definitely talk about the Ford Maverick. I think Tim and I have often said when we get asked the question, are we going to get, a plug-in or are we going to get all-wheel drive hybrid? Our point has often been, well, we often get these things at the mid-model refresh. So Tim, I really appreciate you sharing that with us and sort of, confirming that, when we have our insider talks with people at Ford, often everything comes up to it's going to be, maybe at the mid-model refresh. And the great question was in regards to the Toyota Stout, because I'm getting a lot of
Is it real?
YouTube channels are saying, forget the Ford Maverick, get a Toyota Stout. And I see it influences people's purchasing decisions, because I'll have people and I'm sure you see this as well, Tim, people saying, you know what, I'm not going to wait. I'm tired of waiting or some people, they've never even waited for a Toyota, for a Ford Maverick. And they're saying, you know what, I'm not going to order a Ford Maverick. I'm just going to wait. I'll get a Toyota Stout sooner anyways. Well, first of all, the Toyota Stout, it's only official that Toyota is considering it. And I've got slides for this, but it's just wild that you'll have some YouTube channels go on to, let's see it right here. They say the Toyota Stout is going to tow more than the Ford Maverick, when really behind me, that is what we could say a Toyota Maverick, because, that is literally a Maverick with a few differences, pasted on, really poorly photoshopped
and
work.
it doesn't exist yet, so we don't know how much it can tow.
But that says, is that yours? Because 3,500 is still lower than the Maverick.
Yeah. So these AI generated, I don't know if they're AI generated. I think the scripts are probably AI generated, because I can't imagine a human being having such poor use of deduction and logic. But then again, we'll just say not everyone's a Sherlock Holmes, and clearly not everyone's a Watson either, because this was the equivalent of a 20-watt light bulb. It will not light up a room properly. You're going to be left out in the dark. Don't try to read, folks, with a 20-watt light bulb. You will get a headache. But people consume these channels like they're begging to read in the dark and get a migraine. It's wild, because they go on to say the Toyota Stout, don't buy the Ford Maverick. The Toyota Stout is going to be more fuel efficient. Well, that's funny, because what we could say is Toyota and Ford have a very similar ECVT system. And it's probably more likely that if the Toyota Stout exists, and if it comes down and is offered as a hybrid, they'll probably consume very similar amounts of fuel as the Ford Maverick, because they're using a very similar propulsion system. It's, and even when Toyota goes out of their way to have something very similar to Ford, if you think about the Toyota Tundra's 3.5 liter EcoBoost twin turbo V6 hybrid, which is, really similar to what Ford has. Ford's calling it a power boost. Toyota has the same thing. And are they a whole lot more fuel efficient? No, in the real world, they're probably similar to people's tests seem to be showing that it's consuming a little bit more fuel than Ford's motor, even though they're, 10 years late to the game. They're, at least for the 3.5 liter EcoBoost, that's right, Winston, they're about 10 years late to the game. Honey, when you put the dog down, can you lay him down instead of throw him to the ground?
I throw my
Oh, that was the pen. Okay, I heard the pen hit the ground, and I thought it was the dog hitting the ground. So,
No.
So in regards to the Toyota Stout, I do really want to point out, folks, order a Ford Maverick. It's a great vehicle. Don't wait for, right now, this is a unicorn. It doesn't exist, and it will only exist once it's confirmed existence. Heck, who knows? Maybe unicorns do exist somewhere in some unexplored world, in the center of Antarctica, on someone's, conspiracy wish list. But right now, this is as valid as, a wildly outrageous conspiracy theorists wish list. This is the Bigfoot. This is your unicorn. This is dinosaurs existing at the center of Antarctica. The Toyota Stout, they're only talking about it. And it's just fear tactics to say, well, here's a photo of a burnt Ford Maverick, so that means the Ford Maverick is bad. You can get photos of every make and model. I wouldn't say don't buy a Tesla because there's some photos of Teslas that have caught fire. There's a whole bunch of photos of Teslas that have caught fires. There's a whole bunch of photos of BMWs that have caught fire. And you'll find photos of every make and model that have caught fire. It's all about percentages. If the vehicle's catching fire every single time it gets rear-ended like a 1971 Ford Pinto, well, don't buy a 1971 Ford Pinto, or get a deal on one, take out the fuel tank and put in a fuel cell, like a fuel tank that has, get a special race fuel tank that is, even under impact, because the final layer is like 2 layers of separated plastic, that it won't leak. There's always pros and cons to everything. And sometimes, you have a model that'll be a great deal, a great price. The used market is a great example of pros and cons to everything. Usually the models with the best prices are the least reliable. You can find you can look at a 10-year-old Ford Edge, the price is still high on it. You can look at a 10-year-old Toyota RAV4, the price is still high on those vehicles. High price, that's bad. Extremely reliable vehicle, that's really good. You can also find 10-year vehicles that they're almost paying you to drive away with, but they're just hot garbage. So pros and cons to everything. And one pro to the, if you believe in consumer reports, Consumer Reports, I believe it was Consumer Reports, the Ford Maverick did get rated the 3rd best truck because it was compared to the mid-size truck market, and the Ford Ranger was in the top 3 as well. But like Tim and I said earlier, the true what is reliable and what is not reliable is how much is it going to cost you to own that vehicle over the period of time you're looking to own it. And of course, what is resale? Because, if a vehicle is unbelievably reliable for the first 5 years, but is horribly unreliable on its 10th year, well, it doesn't really bother you if you're selling it after 5 years. But how is that long-term reliability going to affect its resale value in the 5th year? We see these on European vehicles. A European vehicle that can be $100,000 new. Well, after 5 years, if it's $42,000, well, that's because that vehicle is considered to be unreliable now that it's no longer under warranty. Its unreliability truly negatively impacts its value.
Mhm.
So apparently the Toyota Stout is also going to be a better off-roading option, which is funny. The vehicle doesn't exist yet, and this video even went on to say that the Ford Maverick wasn't good at off-roading. And I would disagree. I think the Tremor is an excellent off-roader. I would not, heck, your hybrid was actually pretty decent in that snowstorm we had. We had what, 3-4 inches of snow plus an ice layer on top, and you're on the original tires, it's like the worst rubber compound to be on an icy surface with. And we made it home, and my only regret, we have driven our dealership's hybrid demonstrator. We drove that while towing, and we drove that 1 to about 2 kilometers uphill in 3 to 4 inches of snow, and we just trudged right through, and it was great.
Yeah. It was a big wet snow that could slide easily, and it was fine in the hill. I want to say thank you to Rev Nation. He donated $1.99, saying it's 1% of his lifetime YouTuber earnings. So thank you to share it.
That's
cute.
very nice. And I will be over at around July 5th. We're going to be filming July 5th. So I don't know when the video will actually come out, but I'll be over on Outsider Reviews on his channel, encouraging him, because I think he's got, like Tim and I, he has the ability to use deduction and logic and see things as they are. So that means you look at the pros and cons, and really I think all our goals are to help people out. We all want to serve, and that's what makes us happy. I know for myself, purpose in life, I need to feel like I'm serving and helping people, right? I don't think Tim would put all the hours he puts into informing the car community, the auto enthusiast community, if you weren't into a love for helping and serving people.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah,
All right.
so then you finished your news?
Yeah, the news is gone.
So I want to
Done.
say to everybody, hit the like button, please, and subscribe to both of our channels. So go to the channel, Tim's channels to subscribe it, and you'll be able to rewatch this live on his channel on ours because we did a go live together.
No, that's well, Tim, I don't know, do we rock, paper, scissors to see who closes the show with their regular closing?
Well, I wasn't planning to go live on my channel, so go ahead.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, well, in that case, I wish you all more cars and more power. Like Marie said, subscribe to Tim's channel, Long MacArthur Ford. Subscribe to Johnny's Car Care and Reviews. We are dedicated to serving you all, the auto community, bringing you information to help you get your vehicles, maintain your vehicles, and save you thousands. Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure to have you, Tim, with us tonight. Thank you so much to make it and to give us some time.
All right, well, thank
so
you
much
for having me
your
on.
time, my friend.
Ah.
Well, take care, everyone. And we're now, because this is a format we're not used to, we'll try to do our best to actually close the show without turning the camera 4 or 5 times. Thanks, everyone, for putting up with my technical difficulties at the beginning.